You are watching the news, and you see the footage from Caracas. You see the helicopters, the special forces, the handcuffed leader. The pundits are calling it a triumph of American resolve. They are telling you that the United States is back. But I want you to turn off the television and look at something else. I want you to look at your 401k statement. I want you to look at the price of groceries at your local supermarket. I want you to look at the interest rate on your mortgage. Because what happened in Venezuela this week is not just a military operation. It is a financial event. And it is an event that is going to cost you money. They are selling you a story about justice and democracy. But the reality is that they have just levied a hidden tax on your savings. I call it the geopolitical tax. And unlike the taxes you pay to the IRS, this one wasn't voted on by Congress. It wasn't debated in the Senate. It was decided by a small group of strategists who do not understand how money works. They believe that we can use the US dollar as a weapon of war without any consequences. They believe we can freeze assets, seize reserves, and lock countries out of the banking system, and that the world will just accept it. They are wrong. Every time we use the dollar to punish a foreign government, we are teaching the rest of the world a very dangerous lesson. We are teaching them that the dollar is not a neutral store of value. We are teaching them that it is a political tool. And if you are a foreign central bank holding billions of dollars in American debt, that is a terrifying realization. So what do? You stop buying American debt, start selling it. And when the world stops buying our debt, the interest rates in America go up. That means your house costs more. Your car costs more. And the value of the bonds in your retirement portfolio crashes. This is the mechanism that no one is talking about. The raid in Venezuela might have secured a political objective, but it accelerated an economic disaster. We are throwing a boomerang called sanctions. We think we are throwing it at our enemies, but it is turning around and coming back to hit us right in the wallet. For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this works. I am going to show you the data that proves the world is fleeing the dollar. I am going to explain why your retirement plan is in danger, not because of the stock market, but because of foreign policy. This is the story of the economic boomerang, the weaponization error. To understand the magnitude of the mistake we are making, you have to understand what money actually is. At its core, money is trust. The US dollar became the world reserve currency not because we have the biggest army. It became the reserve currency because for 80 years it was the most trusted asset on the planet. It was neutral. It was stable. It was the rule of law. If you were a country, it didn't matter if you were a democracy or a dictatorship, ally or rival. Your money in US Treasury bonds was safe. It was your money. But in the last few years, we have broken that contract. It started in 2022 when we froze $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves. We told the world, if you invade a neighbor, we will take your money. Now, you might agree with that morally. Most Americans do. But financially, it sent a shockwave through the global system. It told every country in the global south, your money is only safe if Washington likes you. And now, for the operation in Venezuela in 2026, we have doubled down. We have used the U.S. banking system to facilitate regime change. We have weaponized the SWIFT network to cut off a sovereign nation until they complied. Think about this from the perspective of a bank manager. Imagine if your bank manager told you, I do unlike who you voted for in the last election, so I'm freezing your checking account. What would you do? Would you apologize? Would you change your vote? No. You would withdraw every single cent you had and move it to another bank immediately. That is exactly what is happening on a global scale. We are the bank manager. And the countries of the world are the customers. Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India, Indonesia, Turkey, they are looking at what we did to Russia. They are looking at what we just did to Venezuela. Then they are saying, we need to find a new bank. They are not doing this because they hate freedom. They are doing it because they have a fiduciary duty to protect their national wealth. They cannot afford to keep their reserves in a currency that can be turned off like a light switch. This is the weaponization error. We confused our privilege with our right. It is a privilege to print the money the world uses. It allows us to borrow cheaply. It allows us to run massive deficits. It allows us to live beyond our means. But by weaponizing that privilege, we are destroying it. We are forcing the world to build an alternative system. And as we are about to see, they are building it faster than anyone in Washington realizes. The gold rush? If you want to know what is really happening, don't listen to what politicians say. Watch what central banks do. Watch where the smart money is going. In the last 24 months, we have witnessed the greatest migration of wealth in modern history. It is not moving into the dollar. It is moving into gold. According to the World Gold Council, central bank buying reached a historic record in 2024 and shattered that record again in 2025. Who is buying? China is the headline, of course. The People's Bank of China has been buying gold every single month for nearly 3 years. They are dumping US Treasuries and swapping them for physical bars of gold. But it's not just China. Look at Poland. Look at Singapore. Look at India. Look at Turkey. These are not enemies of the United States. Poland is a NATO ally. Singapore is a strategic partner. Why are they hoarding gold? Because gold has no counterparty risk. You cannot sanction gold. You cannot freeze gold if it is sitting in your own vault. You cannot turn off gold with a digital switch. These countries are building what financial strategists call shadow reserves. They are building a fortress of wealth that is immune to the US dollar. They are preparing for a world where the dollar is no longer the only game in town. And the Venezuela operation just poured gasoline on that fire. Every time we use force, the price of gold ticks up. Every time we announce a new sanction, another central bank decides to increase its gold allocation. They are betting against the dollar, and they are betting against American leadership. Think about what that means for you. When China buys gold, they are selling US Treasury bonds to pay for it. When they sell treasuries, the price of those bonds goes down. And when the price of bonds goes down, the interest rate goes up. We are going to talk about interest rates in a minute, but I want you to understand the scale of this. This is trillions of dollars moving out of the American system. For decades, we relied on the world to finance our spending. We spent money we didn't have, and China and Japan loaned it to us. That era is ending. They are tired of lending money to a country that threatens them. They are taking their ball and going home. And that leaves us with a massive pile of debt and no one to buy it. Except, of course, the Federal Reserve, which means printing more money, which means more inflation. Do you see the cycle? Geopolitics leads to gold buying. Gold buying leads to bond selling. Bond selling leads to money printing. Money printing leads to the destruction of your savings. It is a straight line from the rate in Caracas to the inflation at your gas station. The boomerang mechanism. Let's get specific about how this hits your wallet. I want to explain the boomerang mechanism in detail. Because this is the part that Wall Street understands, but Main Street ignores. When the US government spends money, it issues debt. It issues treasury bonds. For 50 years, there was always a buyer for that debt. If we needed to fund a war or a stimulus package or a raid in Venezuela, we issued bonds and the world bought them. This kept our interest rates artificially low. It meant you could get a 3% mortgage. It meant businesses could borrow cheaply to expand. It meant the government could service its debt without going bankrupt. But now, the boomerang is coming back. As countries like China and Saudi Arabia stop buying our bonds to punish us for weaponizing the dollar, demand falls. Econ 101. When demand falls, you have to lower the price to sell the product. In the bond market, lowering the price means raising the yield, the interest rate. So, To attract buyers, the US Treasury has to offer higher and higher interest rates. And here is the trap. The interest rate on the 10-year Treasury bond is the benchmark for the entire global economy. It is the anchor for your 30-year fixed mortgage. It is the anchor for car loans. It is the anchor for credit card rates. So, when China stops buying bonds because they are angry about Venezuela, the yield on the 10-year Treasury spikes. And suddenly, the mortgage rate in Ohio jumps from 6% to 8%. Suddenly, the monthly payment on a new Ford F-150 goes up by $200. Suddenly, small businesses in Florida can't afford to take out a loan to hire new workers. That is the boomerang hitting you. But it gets worse. The inflation effect. For decades, the United States has had a superpower. We could export our inflation. We printed dollars and we sent them overseas to buy cheap goods. Those dollars stayed overseas. They sat in foreign central banks. They sat in global trade accounts. They didn't come back home to chase goods in America. But now, as the world de-dollarizes, those dollars are coming home. Countries are using them to buy real assets. They are dumping them. When those trillions of dollars flood back into the U.S. economy, they chase the same amount of goods. That is the definition of hyperinflation. It means the price of everything you buy goes up, and it stays up. We are seeing the beginning of structural inflation. This isn't the temporary inflation of 2022 caused by supply chains. This is permanent inflation caused by currency rejection, and it is being driven by our foreign policy. We are making enemies faster than we can print money, and the result is a currency that buys less and less every single year. The retirement crisis. Now let's talk about the people who are hurt the most by this. The retirees, the savers. The people who did everything right. You worked for 40 years. You saved your money. You put it in a 401k. You were told to invest in a balanced portfolio. 60% stocks, 40% bonds. You were told that bonds were the safe part of your portfolio. They were supposed to protect you when the stock market crashed. But in a world where the dollar is being weaponized, bonds are not safe. Bonds are certificates of confiscation. When interest rates rise because foreign nations are selling our debt, the value of existing bonds crashes. We saw this in 2022. It was the worst year for bonds in history. And it is happening again. If you are holding a bond fund in your 401k, look at the balance. It is bleeding. It is bleeding because the world is rejecting the debt that backs those bonds. But the bigger threat is purchasing power. Let's say you have $1 million saved for retirement. That sounds like a lot of money. But if inflation runs at 5% or 6% a year because of this currency crisis, the value of that $1 million gets cut in half in just over 10 years. In 20 years, it is worth almost nothing. You planned your retirement based on 2% inflation. You planned based on a stable world led by American finance. That world is gone. We killed it. We killed it by trying to use the financial system as a baton to beat our adversaries. And now you are left holding the bag. Social Security is also in the crosshairs. The Social Security Trust Fund is invested entirely in, you guessed, US Treasury bonds. If the bond market breaks, the math for Social Security doesn't just get bad, it becomes impossible. The government will have to print trillions more to pay out benefits, which creates more inflation, which reduces the value of the check you receive. It is a death spiral, and it is being triggered by decisions made in the Situation Room by people who have never had to balance a checkbook. They see a target on a map. I see a target on your pension. They see a regime change. I see a lifestyle change for millions of American seniors who will be forced to go back to work because their money died. This is the hard truth that no one wants to admit. There is a cost to being a bully. For a long time, America was rich enough to pay that cost. We were so dominant that we could make mistakes, start wars, and impose sanctions without feeling any pain. Those days are over. We are $36 trillion in debt. We are dependent on the kindness of strangers to keep the lights on. And instead of being kind to those strangers, we are threatening them. We are pointing a gun at our bankers and demanding they follow our orders. It is a suicidal strategy. The raid in Venezuela was not a show of strength. It was a show of hubris. And the bill for that hubris is coming due. It is coming due in the form of higher prices, higher rates, and lower savings. The question you need to ask yourself is not, did we get the bad guy? The question is, can I afford the victory? Because from where I am sitting, the price is too high. The price is the destruction of the American middle class. So what can you do? You cannot change foreign policy. You cannot call the White House and tell them to stop weaponizing the dollar. But you can protect yourself. You can do exactly what the central banks are doing. You can build your own shadow reserves. You can diversify out of the dollar. You can look at assets that cannot be printed and cannot be sanctioned. History is very clear on this. When an empire begins to debase its currency to fund its military adventures, the smart money moves to hard assets. It moves to things that are real. In my next video, I am going to break down the personal gold standard. I am going to show you how to construct a portfolio that is designed to survive the economic boomerang. I'm going to show you what the wealthy are buying right now while the rest of the country is distracted by the headlines. Do not let your retirement become collateral damage in a geopolitical war. Educate yourself, protect your wealth, and stop believing the narrative that these interventions are free. They are the most expensive things we have ever bought. I will see you in the next video.